Hello sewing students! Today we're going to be working on our skirts again. I'm going to show you how to put in the zipper and finish the waistband with bias tape. In our last class next week, I'm going to show you how to finish the hem, and then you'll be all done with your skirt. Yay! Alright, let's start. Okay, so this is my skirt. I have finished, as you can see, sewing all the darts. This is my front, and this is one of my side seams, and this is the other side seam, so that's the front. So I'm going to turn it over, and this is my center back. So I finished my edge on the serger. I want you guys to finish it just like you did the zigzag stitch on the edges. I want you to do that. So that's what you do first. So you're going to go on your sewing machine and you're going to do a zigzag stitch. If you have pinking shears, pink it too, and finish this edge because you need to finish it before you put in the zipper. So I've already done mine. So now the next step is to put our center back seams, our center back pieces together like this, right sides together, and we're going to measure the space for the zipper. So I have to make an adjustment to my zipper before we start. This tape right here that's above the zipper pull, it's more than a 1/2 inch because we're using this bias tape to finish the waistband, and the bias tape is going to cover the edge of the zipper like this, and we don't want these to stick out. So I'm going to measure a 1/2 inch from the top of my zipper pull to the top of the tape, and I'm going to mark that, and I'm just going to cut it off. So I think it's just like a 1/4 inch, and I just marked it with some chalk, and I'm going to cut it off. Just like that. And now, after you've clipped off these edges on your zipper, you need to measure from the top of the tape to your stopper right here. That's the opening. Mine is 8 inches. Yours might be different depending on your zipper length. Maybe it's 9 inches, maybe it's 7 inches or 10 inches. You need to measure from the top of the tape to your stopper, and that's the measurement that you're going to chalk on your skirt. So mine is 8 inches. So I'm going to take my measuring tape and bring it to the top of my skirt. That's my waistband, and 8 inches, and I'm going to mark it with the chalk. And your measurement might be different than mine. So whatever the measurement is you get, you're going to measure from the top of the waist down and mark it. And once I've done that, then I can start pinning. So I match up the edges of my waist and the edges where my chalk mark is, and I start pinning at the chalk, and I'm going to pin all the way down to the bottom of the skirt. So I'm going to pin this, and then I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then I'm going to press the seam open really well, and then once the seam is pressed nice and flat open all the way to the top of the waistband, then I'll start putting the zipper in. So all of you have done this before. You've put in a zipper a couple of times, so this should be review. We've never put a zipper in a skirt before, so it's a slightly different because there's an opening at the top. In the past we were doing zippers in purses and pouches, and so there was no opening. So now I have my center back pinned. I'm going to go to the sewing machine, and I'm going to start sewing here at this chalk point, back stitch, and sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way down. That's what I want you to do too. Alright students, so I sewed my 1/2 inch seam allowance from my chalk, ignore that chalk line, from this chalk line down, and now I'm at my ironing board, and you're going to take your iron and you're going to iron your seam open. And if you remember from the last time when we did a zipper, you're going to keep ironing that 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way up to the top. So this 1/2 inch seam allowance here is your guide for the zipper. So you want to have that nice and flat all the way to the top. Nice and flat. So once that's nice and flat like that, then you can take your zipper and you don't put it in like that, pin it in like this. So you want to turn it over because this is the wrong side, this is the right side. So turn it over and insert it into the bottom opening. So I'm making sure my zipper is all the way at the bottom. And then what I do is I lay my zipper nice and flat on one side all the way up to the top. My tape's a little bit longer than my waistband, so I'll just trim that again after I'm done sewing it in. So the trick here is holding the stopper at the opening, and then you want to make sure your teeth on your tape are right at the fold. So your teeth should be right along this fold edge, just like that. So what I do is I go up with my fingers to the top, and you want to start pinning here. I think I'm going to show you on this side because it might be easier for you to see. You want to start pinning at the top. So I know it's tempting to start pinning here and go up, but you don't want to do that. You want to pin from the top and you want to go down. So I'm pinning through all layers just like that, and the edge of my fabric's right up next to my teeth. This is a kissing zipper. This is the same zipper we've done in the past. And I'm going to pin like a horseshoe, one continuous length. Your zipper should be open. You always want your zipper to be open. You don't want to pin a closed zipper. And then what I'm doing is I'm turning, take the skirt out, and I'm turning like this, and then I'm just going to keep pinning up the other side. So I'm putting my hand underneath the skirt now. And I'm making sure the tape is laying on the seam allowance. And I'm going to pin the other side now. I'm going to go all the way up to the top. And again, you want to make sure the tape is right on the edge of the fabric. The teeth are on the edge of the fabric. And you can do this right at your ironing board. And just a few more pins, and then after you pin the zipper in, then we baste it with a needle and thread. So if you remember, we baste it so that we can take the pins out when we sew it. So the pins are in just like that, my zipper's open. Now I'm going to grab my needle and my thread. It's good to have a contrasting color thread. So if you're working on a dark colored zipper tape, then you should have a light colored thread. If you have a light colored zipper tape, a dark colored thread. That way you can see it more easily, and it's easier to take out after you've sewn. So remember, when you baste, you only want one layer of thread. So I'm going to have a tail. You want to have enough thread to get all the way around your zipper. So I barely have enough thread. So make sure you have enough to go all the way around your zipper. Single layer of thread. I'm going to put a messy knot at the bottom because it doesn't matter. We're going to take this out. I have a little tail. And I'm going to start in the same place where I started pinning. And I'm going to come up and I'm going to go through the center of the tape, up and down 1/2 inch distances. So a 1/2 inch, the thread should be a 1/2 inch, and then the space should be a 1/2 inch. half inch here, half inch there, up and down, straight down the center of the tape. So after you do this all the way around, then you can take the pins out. So I'm just going up and down, straight down the center, and I'm going through all the layers. All the layers. Up and down. Great. So I have basted in my zipper, and I took my pins out, and it looks like this. I still have it open. I haven't closed it yet. If you open and close it, it's going to move around. So it's best not to play with it. Don't play with it. We need to switch our foot. So this is my zipper foot. I'm going to take off my standard presser foot, and I'm going to switch in my zipper foot. So your zipper foot has two channels, one on the left and one on the right. Depending on which side of the zipper you're going to sew first, that's the channel you need to put it in. So again, I can see where I started basting because my knot's there. You always want to pin in the same direction, baste in the same direction, and then we're going to sew in the same direction. So if I'm going to sew on this side of my tape, I need my zipper foot to be like this, in this channel. If you're going to sew on the other side, on this side of the tape, then you would need to have your foot in that channel, the other channel. Okay, so it just depends which side you're sewing on. Oops. So now my zipper foot's in, and when I'm sewing the zipper on right side up. So this is the right side of my garment, not the wrong side, the right side. You should see your zipper pull like that. And I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance, or a 1/4 inch from the edge. So if you want to mark that with some chalk, you want to sew a 1/4 inch from this fold here in. The tape is a 1/2 inch long, so you don't want to sew a 1/2 inch because that'd be too far. You want to sew straight down the center, so a 1/4 inch from the edge. I'm going to start with a back stitch to the top, and I'm just sewing both layers. Quarter inch from the edge all the way around. When I get to the bottom, if you can't get around your zipper pull, then you need to leave your needle in and lift the foot so you can get around it. I'm gonna pull my zipper up a little bit, about 1 inch, just so that I can get around comfortably. So when you get to the stopper, you're gonna go down a 1/4 inch. And then you're going to pivot with the needle in and turn and make a box around your zipper. And then you go a 1/4 inch past the zipper. And then you start sewing up the other side. Now I'm to a point where I can push my zipper back. So now I can finish sewing all the way up. Back stitch at the end and trim your threads. And now you have your finished zipper. So you can close your zipper now and see how it looks. The folds should be touching each other, and if you use a matching thread, it'll look much better. It won't show as much your mistakes. So after you've sewn it in like that, you trim all your threads, and then you can take out your basting stitch. So after you trim all the threads and take out your basting stitch, I'll show you the rest of the last step, which is putting on your waistband. Okay, so I finished sewing the zipper in. I took out my basting and I ironed it. So I used the iron to give it a nice press to clean it up. Now we're going to finish the waistband. So as you can see, the zipper tape is still a little bit too long. So I'm just taking my scissor and trimming it right off. Trimming it off so it matches the waistband. Just like that, really simple. Now the zipper tape is matching the waistband. And what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a technique where you're using this. This is called bias tape. And what it is it's strips of fabric that have been cut on the bias. You can see you can see how the fabric has a grain that's going diagonal, and that's the bias. So it's stretchy. If you pull on it, it stretches. So that's why it works well on the waist, because it can curve around the waist. The bias fabric curves nicely. So this is a double fold bias tape, and if you look at it closely, it's a 1/2 inch wide. If you turn it over, you can see that one side is slightly longer than the other. So what we want to do is find the side that's shorter. So I can see that this side's longer. This side here is shorter. So I want to take the short side. If I open it up, you can see that this is shorter than this side. I'm going to take the short side and I'm going to open it up like this, and I'm going to lay the short side up on my waistband at the edge of the waistband like this. Now I'm going to leave a 1/2 inch hanging off the edge here. So we don't want to pin it like that. We want to pin it with a 1/2 inch hanging off, because what we're going to do is we're going to sew the tape to the waistband, and then we're going to fold it up like this, and then we're going to fold this over to cover the edge and back down like that, and it'll finish the waistband really nice. It'll look like this when you're finished, and the edges of the tape will be finished like that. So again, you want to find that short end, and you're going to take the short end, open it up all the way up, and you're going to pin it with a 1/2 inch hanging over the edge right up on your waistband. So we're going to pin it first, and then we're going to sew it on our sewing machine. So when you're sewing it on your sewing machine, you're going to sew right on this groove, the crease. So it's a really easy guide. I'm pinning it up on the edge of my fabric. There's a little bit of this, that's called dart meat, sticking up. That's okay, we can trim that off later. Make sure your darts are facing in towards the body. My darts are folding the right direction towards the zipper. They should be facing towards the zipper. And you should also, well, it's up to you. There's 2 ways. You can either take the bias tape and measure your waist and cut it. I prefer to take just my whole bias tape and just go along without measuring. That way I don't have a mistake. So I just have a very long piece here. And I'm not measuring it. I'm just gonna go pin it all the way around and I should have enough. And then I don't end up cutting it too short. Sometimes if you cut the bias tape too short, then oh no, you'd have to recut a new piece. And as I'm pinning it, I'm making sure that my seam allowances are open, like this seam allowance is open, and now I have more darts here. And I want to make sure these darts are facing towards the center front. And I'm just going to pin it all the way around. So I'm ready to sew my bias tape onto the waistband. Remember to take your zipper foot off and replace it with your regular foot. And pin your tape all the way around. And also make sure you turn your skirt inside out. As you can see, mine's inside out, so I'm sewing on the inside of the circle. So my skirt's turned inside out, and I'm going to sew directly on that crease. So there's a crease in the bias tape. I'm taking out my pin. So we don't want to sew over our pins. And I'm going to back stitch like we always do. You just want to sew right on that crease. Be careful not to go off the crease. You want to do your best to stay on it, because it'll be harder to do the other steps if you don't stay on the crease, and the bias tape tends to want to move, so use your fingers to hold it in place. Okay, class, we're almost done. Okay, the first thing we're gonna do is sort of trim the dart meat, because it's sticking up and we don't want to have that extra thickness, because we're gonna fold this over like that. So I'm going around and just checking to see if it's sticking up quite a bit like that. I'm just trimming it off. So you should do that so you don't have a lot of thickness. And then after that, we're going to use our iron to press the bias tape flat this direction. You don't need to take out the folds. You just want to iron this part that you sewed. You want to iron that out like we always iron after we sew, to get it nice and flat. And I'm going all the way around the waistband. After you iron it, then we're gonna fold it over to the other side so it covers the other side, and pin it. And then after we pin it, we're gonna take it to the sewing machine, and then you'll be done. Okay, so I folded it up. Now I'm gonna fold this over. It's gonna cover my zipper, and I'm going to fold it this way. So now I'm going to work from this side. So I folded it over nice and neat, like this, and then like this. And I'm going to pin. So I'm pinning on the wrong side. And I want this side here to be longer than the other side, because when I sew on the sewing machine, I'm going to stitch right here on top. And when I stitch here, it needs to catch this side. So I'm going to repin this to make this neater. So it's nice and neat. And you really want to get this fold tight, because again, you've got to catch the end of the fabric when you're sewing. think I just pinned myself. So we want this to be nice and flat. You can use your iron to help get that fold nice and flat. And I'm pinning from the inside, and this pin needs to catch on that side. And so I'm ironing just like that, and then pinning like this all the way across. And when you get to the other end of the zipper, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to fold the end in just like I did on this end. All right, so I pinned my bias tape all the way around, and now I'm going to top stitch on the bias tape right here. So I'm stitching on the bias tape right at the edge where it falls into the skirt. And again, my skirt is turned inside out, and I'm just trying to get it positioned here. It's a little bit thick, it's a little hard to get started because of the thickness. So it's easier if you start beyond the zipper, don't start right on the zipper. I'm going to go forward a couple and then back stitch to the edge. And I'm going to sew all the way around. Oops, I went off the bias tape a little. I don't want to do that. So this is challenging. You want to stay right on the bias tape. So I recommend that you use thread that matches your bias tape. Otherwise, it's going to show all your mistakes. So I just went off a little bit right there. I want to show it to you, and so you can see it because my thread's not matching. So it's not the end of the world. I'm still catching my bias tape, but it shows more if you don't have matching tape. Matching thread. And if you pinned it correctly, then you should be fine. If you pinned it correctly, you should be catching the tape on the other side. So you just continue sewing on the edge. It looks just all the way to the end. So when you're done sewing, it should look like this. If you're using matching thread, you won't even see it. And the other side is caught like that. It's holding it in place. And that's it. All right, so the skirt's almost done. I've finished my waistband and the zipper. All we have left is the hem, which I will show you in our final class. It's really easy. It's the same hem we've used on the pajama pants and we've used many times. So I look forward to showing you that, and I look forward to our last class. That's it for this video. Stay well and stay safe. Bye.